Thank you so much, Joe, for having us as well, and for everyone for being here. Is the mic on or not? I can just project just give me a wave if you can't hear me at any point. Thanks so much for being here. We're gonna ask each other some questions, have a bit of chat, and then have plenty of time for audience questions at the end. Elle, obviously it's really exciting about Unapologetic Love Story. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Can you just tell us a little bit about it to start us off?
The title is not subtle. It's very much a commercial romance. It's about an autistic woman who's a podcaster. She's got a disability podcast, with all of the complications that come with that, with our media. And her star is kind of on the rise, and she meets this anti-fascist journalist who has been dubbed the king of cancel culture by a really nasty right-wing editor of some broadsheet, and he is deeply committed to uncovering frauds and uncovering bad things in the culture, and it's about their meeting and their meeting of minds and other things. Meeting of other things, and it's about London, and it's about being an autistic woman in the public eye. I think it was very inspired by the strange questions I got at a press junket I did once as a screenwriter, where they were like, a lot of the Americans, I will say, I do love Americans, but a lot of them were like, you have autism? I was like, I'm autistic, yes. And I would try and talk about the work, and they'd be like Asperger's? I was like, Asperger's? And I'm like, I always love how they say it, it's like you're a burger from your butt. Like, I was like, technically, yeah, ASD. And then they were like, do you have sex? And I was like, we're talking about a YA TV show. Yeah. So I was like, I did last night, Margaret, but we're not talking about that. It just was so bizarre. And so I sat down and I wrote this outline. I was like, what if this was 24/7? And that's kind of the book. It's a nice break from what I normally write. And I think also, it's about I'm a big romantic. I love love. I love love stories. But anytime there's a disabled love story, that disabled person is dying. That's how that story ends. And so this is a defiantly triumphant fuck you to the dead disabled ending and the happy disabled ending instead. Yeah. So it feels radically joyful, I hope. But that's a terrible bit. I don't do elevator pitches. I'm really bad at them. No, but that was so funny. But it's the publishers were like, what about World Autism Day for publication? Yeah. And I was like, you're lucky that falls on the first Thursday in the month. You're lucky. Yeah. You are so lucky. So yeah, we're coming out on the 2nd of April.
The 2nd of April. Oh, it's so soon.
But I feel, no, don't. I'm sweating just thinking about it. But These Mortal Bodies, which I know loads of people are here for, out in paperback now. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Although I'm sure loads of people here have read it and have loved it, but if anyone hasn't, can you tell us about it? Yeah.
So I always have it here just to thumb through. Oh no, that's Nikesh Nicholas' book, which I would highly recommend. That's my read at the moment. So These Mortal Bodies is it's a dark academia coming of age story which follows the story of Ivy, who's a Scottish student who gets accepted at this really prestigious all-girls college at this elite university south of the border, and she's kind of an outsider in so many ways. She's had a lot of grief in her past. Her best friend has just died. She's autistic, although she doesn't know it in the story. And she's also from a different class background than this really kind of posh, privileged group of friends that she meets at university. And initially she feels like there's kind of this jigsaw, little missing piece of the jigsaw of the town that she can fit right into. But over the course of the novel, it's set over 1 year, exactly, pretty much, she basically realizes that there's this darker underside to this really elite world, and has to decide how far she's willing to go to belong. So it is really a book which is driven by that question of belonging, and her really fervent desire to belong definitely affects her, the choices she makes, and also makes her, I think, quite vulnerable as a character, especially at quite a formative age. But it's also a book that's really about friendship as well. The trinity of girls at the novel, Ivy, Martha and Primrose, they're really at the heart of the novel. And yeah, they're kind of both good and bad aspects and very complicated interwoven aspects of friendship. And exploring gender and femininity as well, because I was really interested in writing in a quite like claustrophobic closed space environment, and having this really binary environment was really interesting to me. And again, like that real desire to belong in that space as well, which Ivy doesn't maybe necessarily find super easy, but the kind of ways that she contorts herself, but then also discovers herself throughout the novel as well. So yeah, and also a lot of nature writing in there. That's kind of how I first came to writing, was through writing about nature, more non-fiction. And then I kind of realized like, oh, actually, we always think about nature writing in terms of non-fiction. That's the way it's usually talked about, but kind of everything is nature writing. Like if you're writing a fantasy novel and you're doing world building, you're inevitably writing about nature, and I would say nature is a really big character in this book as well. The college is surrounded by trees. There's the girls have a particular relationship with a particular tree, and I'm really interested in ritual too, and especially how we think about ritual is often quite exoticized, quite othered, and yet there's obviously especially in sort of like old universities, there's often so much ritual which is used to kind of make people feel like other and outside as well, and yet that's not really like. I studied anthropology, and it was always like very much rooted in kind of colonialism, and a lot of the first anthropologists were people who were basically like hired by the British government to like write ethnographies of colonized people, and yet it's never really turned on the institutions themselves, who are doing like all this very strange stuff and have lots of terminology for things which, you know, others people, and if you don't know it, you feel on the outside. So kind of all those things went
Who gets
into
to
this
define
book.
other.
Exactly. So so that is that's these mortal bodies, and it touches on all those topics. I think friendship is definitely something that I'm drawn to kind of writing about again and again from different angles, and I'm finding that no matter what I write about, even in really different genres, it ends up being kind of at the heart of things.
And then I guess more questions as you write, you go, well, that's for another book.
Exactly.
It's never ending well.
Exactly. I definitely agree, because I mean, obviously you've written how many books exactly now?
This will be 9.
9, yeah. So which is so impressive. But I definitely think it's interesting when you're writing, even when you have a certain character, for example, who you're like, oh, that poses a really interesting question, or their story would be really interesting, but obviously can't fit in the bounds of a sort of 90,000 word novel.
It's fine, they'll be in the next 90,000 word novel. Okay, do you want to go from the coconut?
I'll go from the coconut. Okay, so do you have a typical writing day, or does writing look different to you every time you write?
It's different every day. Yeah, that's the boring answer, isn't it? I sometimes end up sort of endlessly scrolling on Book Talk, and there's people who have the most pristine home offices, and they have their color coordinated post-it notes, and they've got their binders, and they've got their boards. And I just think, why can't I be like that? Like, why can't I do that? I'm not good at that. I'm literally like 3 Diet Cokes and a prayer. That's what's getting me through every draft. But I think and also in the world of like kids books as well, you meet these very like sort of tough middle class ladies that are like, I get up at 6 a.m. and I write 5,000 words, and I just think, all right, Helen, okay. And it's so there is no Helen. That's not anyone. But I try and do at least 1,000 words a day, whatever that looks like, and that's the only ritual I would say I have. That and locking my dog out of the room to make sure he love him, but oh my god, he's like, can I write the book? He's so sweet. But that's my only ritual, I would say. I take notes all the time. I'm always taking notes. Sometimes in people's presence I'll start taking notes, which I know is a bit rude, but sometimes I'm like, it's because they're so interesting. I'm like, have to take this down. But that's really the only ritual. It is not, I wish it was more miraculous and more glamorous, but it is just, I have to get these words down, and a bad page is easier to edit than a blank page. So that's the only ritual, I would say.
Well, I was just going to say, when you write through, do you, because you said a bad page is easier to edit than a blank page, are you someone who will write the whole...
So I'll get from start to finish. I once met an author who said they wrote the entire manuscript and then they deleted it completely. They didn't just they didn't just sort of put it to one side, they just got rid of it, and then they would rewrite the book, and I just thought, that's maniacal. Like, it's so, I actually felt a bit unnerved. I was like, what a dangerous person. But they weren't. They're great. But I can't do that. But I would much rather get to the end, and then you read it back and you're just like, what was I thinking? What is this? But it forms more of a shape. I don't like to edit as I go, because then I'll never stop and I'll start questioning everything.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I definitely have spoken to some writers who have been very much like, I can't believe you don't edit as you go, because isn't it so bad at the end? But I definitely...
You're like, no, I'm a better writer than you. No, it's not. No, never. But like...
I definitely agree with you. I think that for me, I have to finish it, because I think I can be quite detail oriented and feel quite perfectionist, that I feel like I'm never gonna finish something, and like my only shot is to basically just write the first draft and keep going, even if I'm like forgotten about a character like halfway through. I'm like, okay, that's fine, I'll pick them up for the last 10,000 words and then we'll sort it later on.
The copy editor will get it. But like, I mean, I really do call it a draft zero, not a first draft. It's a draft zero, and I'm literally telling myself the story, not telling anybody else. I'm just telling me, and then I will go back and do the first draft, which is telling someone else the story. So I think of it that way. I do think it's cool that people edit as they go. I do get it, but I agree with you that I would just never stop.
I think something I've noticed about people who edit as they go is often they write shorter novels or short stories or novellas, and I can see... I'm sure there are people out there who write like epic fantasy, which is like 200,000 words long and editing as they go, but it probably is easier for a shorter book.
And the great thing is, like, this is what I say to the kids all the time, is like, there's no rules. There really are no rules, apart from finish the damn thing. There are no rules. So if someone does that, that's great. If someone deletes their whole draft, it's scary, but that's up to them. That's their business. So right. Okay, all right. Is there a genre you haven't written in yet that you're keen to try?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, when you were talking about unapologetic love story, like, I have written a few books. So obviously this was my first novel. I've written my second novel, and it has some similar themes, but it's a bit... There are like darker themes in these mortal bodies. Like, it is about grief and belonging, as I said, but there is also quite a lot of like glitz and glamour and like good parties and stuff in it as well. But the second novel that I've written is it's also set at university, and it's also about friendship, but it's basically kind of asking, like, what if your friend does something terrible to you? How do you reconcile that with still loving them? So it's basically about assault, but also, and so it's been an intense writing experience. And I'm also working on a non-fiction proposal, which is about access to the outdoors and who has that based on lots of different factors. And that they've been both really... I've learned a lot from writing them, but I just really wanted to write a romance. So now I'm writing like at the very, very early stages of writing a sapphic sports romance. That's what I'll say for now. And it's really enjoyable, really different, but I don't know I'd be interested... Tennis. I got really into tennis. That's one of the good ones. Yeah, I got really into tennis last year, and I feel like it just kind of became like a bit of a special interest. Like, I was like, I know a lot about tennis now, like a lot from going from someone who didn't know anything about it. And I think also, like, when you watch a sport and you get really into it, I do think it can really help you as a writer. Like, I'm saying this as someone who is like not a sporty person and historically very uninterested in sports. I feel like if picking one sport really actually helped me, because there's so many plot lines, like everyone's a character. I feel like actually what makes it interesting is this, like, I don't care that much about the matches. Like, I'll be like, okay, I'll have a little glance at that, but I'm more interested in, like, okay, this person's having a massive comeback, or this person has had this challenge, and then how are they overcoming that, or there's this rivalry, or like these aspects. I think that's what's like really interesting about it. And the duality
of tennis as well, you know, it's like chess. It's one of those things where you're so locked in.
Exactly.
Unless you're playing doubles, but like if you're playing single. But that's so great, because I know sports romance, because of heated rivalry, sports romance is going to get commissioned up the wazoo, and that's great. But some of the sports people try and pitch to me, they're like, oh, we've got a great golf romance. I'm like, oh no. Thank you so much.
Well, I was like, being from Edinburgh, I've always, like, the sport that my dad was really into when I was younger was rugby. And I did think, could I write a rugby romance? And then I was like, I think there's too many people on the team and it's too confusing. But I mean, obviously in heated rivalry they did manage it, but for me, I was like, I think this is too many characters. It just needs to be two people. I'm confused.
I could easily fall in love with a women rugby player. They are gnarly. They are I love, so yeah, that would be, but tennis is perfect, so can't wait.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is, I feel like, well, with other neurodivergent writers I've spoken to, it feels a bit like, obviously in the industry you're often told, oh, it's better for your career if you kind of stick with one genre or one thing. I'm just not sure how easy that is for us. I don't know if you
No.
relate to that. Like, is there a genre that you really want to write in? Or, I mean, obviously you've tried quite a lot of different things already.
I'm in a lot
Yeah.
of things, but the thing I do have, obviously, what unites them is neurodiversity.
Yeah.
And there's just a million different ways to talk about that. But I mean, I've never done a Western. I'd love to do like a Western. No, people think I'm joking when I say that. I'm like, no, a genuinely like diverse Western. That'd be great, a proper like historically accurate one. But no, I feel okay. I'm lucky that I have the freedom to move around genre. I'm privileged in that way, that I was allowed to basically write what I wanted. So that's a real privilege as well. But I also think, like, I don't know if any writer wants to write in the same.
No,
I think
I
a lot of
agree.
people make the choice. They go, okay, I just want to, but I do think we're entering a really interesting era where we're seeing much more diversity in individual authors' careers and what they're doing. I don't know if that's just me, but I feel like I'm seeing that more often.
Yeah,
and I think that's exciting.
I think it's exciting too, and I think what you said about how kind of neurodiversity unites your book is interesting, because I don't think that there necessarily has to be anything. Like, if you want to have an author career which is united by nothing, I'm like, go for it. But I can see how that could be a different way to almost position yourself, like where, because I think, you know, historically it's like, maybe you write thrillers, okay, maybe you write something else, but you have to use a pen name, but maybe there's something else that can sort of...
No, I'm really lucky I don't have to change. I can use my name for all 3 bands. That's been really lucky.
Yeah, that's really nice, because I feel like so many, and my agent wrote a Substack about this actually, where they were saying that they think it's more common for women to have to use pen names, because
it's interesting, because obviously, like, my books have always been quite grown up. They're YA, but they're, you know, they're mature books. But posting about the new book, posting about a romance novel, and you're wearing a slightly more adult dress in the picture, and suddenly I've got mums in my DMs being like, "Oh, my daughter loves you. Please cover up your cleavage, please." And I'm just like,
no.
Like, well, exactly. No is a complete sentence, but also then I start questioning myself. I'm like, am I being like a bad person for doing that? But it's really strange. So I see why some people go for the pseudonym, because they just want that separation, but I don't. And I'm really lucky that I've had adult readers my whole career, and it's always been like, I mean, sometimes to the detriment of the events. They'll come to the kids' events and be like, "Why are there children here?" And I have to sort of be like, because the books are for young adults. But I've been very privileged. But I do know a lot of female authors, as you say, who are like, "No, I can't write my romance in my middle grade. Are you kidding? I can't do them under the same name." And I'm like, why? Why? Roald Dahl did it, and he wasn't even very good. Like, why? Like, controversial, maybe, but like, it was not adult writing. But it's like, why men do it? Why can't women? So.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to something as well, as you were saying, like those mums who sort of want you to like be like the author that they want you to be, but not like the full person with these different things that you...
They don't want you to be a woman, they want you to be their child's role model.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, a lot of that is in the book as well. I mean, the opening scene of the book is literally a school visit at an all-girls private school, and they have done what's happened to me a lot, where they hire an autistic speaker for World Autism Day, and then you show up in your Manolo Blahniks and your like mascara smudged from the night before, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't what we wanted, like Judi Dench. Who's this?" And that's my opening, because it's like, you are constantly, if you are, you know, an autistic woman, I think especially, people are just like, whatever this is, I can't put this in a box and I don't feel comfortable. And you get to a point where you're like, I don't care if you feel comfortable. I don't care. Like, I'm not hurting anybody. So yeah, I don't even know how I got onto that, but
No, definitely. I feel like it's like, you're not meeting their expectations, which has obviously been so conditioned by the idea of like a sort of like...
You're not being obedient.
Yeah.
And you're not, but I always sort of say to them, I'm like, look, I've been doing this a long time. I've been diagnosed since I was 9 years old. I've not met people's expectations for a very long time. It's been a very long road of not much fun. So I would quite like to have fun now as an adult and not waste any more time worrying about what neurotypical people think of what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And I think if more people in our culture minded their business, then we would be a lot happier and in the community with each other a lot more.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
But I don't even remember what the question was.
What were we talking about? Oh yeah, genre. Yeah. So Western was your...
People laugh, but I Westerns have been too masculine for too long. I think. Yeah,
I actually met someone recently who I think they've been shortlisted in the women's like the Discoveries like prize that the
great.
Women's Prize runs, and they were writing a feminist
fantastic.
Western.
I'll be all over that.
Yeah, no,
Love
so I think you should write it.
I'll
Definitely.
do it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Next book.
You do a romance, I'll do a Western.
Yeah, do you want to pick a question?
Well, that was my one.
Oh, that was mine. Okay,
I can do another one.
I'll pick one from here. Okay. Okay, was the process of writing your first book different to writing your other books? And if so, how did it change? I mean, you've got a lot of books to talk about.
No, I'll answer quickly because it's not very interesting. I wrote my first book in about 2 days, and it was like a fever dream. And then I, and then I added a lot more, and then but it was never meant to be seen by anybody. I was meeting my publisher, who was no longer exists, Knights of Press, but it's an all women of colour press, and I was sat down with them because they wanted to talk to me about being an autistic editor for any potential books they picked up to do with autism, because I was already in the industry. People kind of knew me as a troublemaker, so they were like, get her in to make some trouble. And I was like, look, I got this author, I got this author, I got this author that I think you'll like. This person's written a little bit for an anthology, but they're not published yet. And then halfway through the meeting, they said, have you written a book? And I went, I have like 17,000 words of something. And they said, oh, can we see it? And I sent it to them, and then they bought it 2 weeks later. So it was a really I didn't have an agent. They had to find me an agent who's still my agent. So it was unusual. I'd never queried. I still haven't. So I get questions all the time about querying, and I'm like, I don't know. It sounds awful. It sounds horrible. And then we found some great indie writers as well. But when that press was going, it was fantastic. But it was a quick one. But the great thing about the first one is that you just have no idea what's coming. And then when you sit down, I don't know if you have this, but you sit down and try the second one, and you know so much more. You just know how much attention actually will be on that manuscript. And it took a little while to turn that off and be like, oh, what are they going to say about this on Goodreads, or what are they going to say about this on XYZ? Turning that off was the challenge in book 2, I would say.
How long does it take you to write, like, for example, how long did it take to write Unapologetic Love Story?
A lot longer.
Okay.
No, that was a fluke. That wasn't, and also it was short. But Unapologetic took a lot longer.
Okay.
I mean, first draft took like a couple months. So
okay, yeah. That still sounds quite quick to me. I'm quite slow. I definitely agree with you about kind of like, it's quite nice almost being quite naive and not really knowing anything too much with the first book. And I was also, I think like a lot of people, I wrote these multiple bodies, the first draft during COVID. So I'd started writing it beforehand, like just before, but then I wrote it on the time that I would have been commuting otherwise. So I kind of had like that little bit of time back. I was still working full time, and I was actually a carer for my mum at the same time. So it wasn't like, I wasn't like, I've been furloughed, I have loads of time. I was like, I'm still very busy, but I did get that little like bit of time back. And I think that was really helpful. But then I actually had more time almost to write the second book. And I think I found that a bit, like as in I had more free time, and I found that a little bit harder because I think I work quite well with constraint. Like, people never believe me when I say this, but I wrote the first draft of this. It's not as impressive as writing it in 2 days, but I wrote the first draft of this in 15-minute chunks, like just with the timer on my phone, and I found that constraint like incredibly helpful. I don't know, I think there's something about like structure and also finishing on like a high. Like I would be like, oh, I'm still really into it when I wrote it. So then when I came back to it the next day, because I was quite strict with the timer and because that was the only time I had, I'd be like, okay, this is like my 15-minute of escape around these other things. And I guess sometimes really that was,
a lot of the time you'd be in a flow, or you'd be really excited about what's coming next, or at least feeling
exactly.
And then you have to be restrained.
So I'd let myself like just like write a couple of notes, but then I would like, it would be like, okay, well I actually have to go and do something else now, so I didn't necessarily have the time. But in a way, I think being like so focused, like I was like, I've got this time, and this is the time that I'm going to make the most of it, was actually really helpful. But then also I think the second book, I wanted it to be like a hopeful, like readable book, so I was really aiming for that. But then obviously the subject matter is difficult, so I think that was also, I needed big breaks in between the redrafts, so that also made it slow, because it was like I could work on it quite intensely, but then I'd be like, oh, I don't actually really want to, like I want to like have like 3 or 4 months off. And also I guess the luxury, there's obviously pros and cons to different numbers of book deals, but I only had a book deal for this book, so although I kind of had like a rough deadline for my agent, I did have the time. And I guess that was kind of the upside of that, is that I felt like, okay, I can just it takes the time that it takes.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I love that 15-minute. That's
it really helps. I think I need to go back to it.
That's great. Okay, how does being neurodivergent impact your creativity?
I feel like it's a bit of a like how long is a piece of string question. But I think in lots of different ways, I guess two that I would pull out. I think firstly, I do think I'm quite details oriented, and I think that always, like, I can't not like all my whole life I've always like noticed tiny things, or like I remember something when I was younger, I really learned that it would be like weird if you would remember someone's like auntie's friend's dog's name, but I would like always remember that. So I used to start like pretending that I wouldn't, like, people would be like, oh, I don't think I've mentioned like my auntie Sandra before, and I'd be like, well, you have, and I remember where she lives, and I remember what she does, and all this stuff. In 2008
you said that, and they're exactly. Like, oh, you're a stalker.
Exactly.
Like,
so I learned that actually I kind of like, that was something I definitely really masked and would be like, oh yeah, no, tell me. But I feel like that kind of like noticing detail, and as you said, you're always noting things down, I think that really impacts my creativity, because it's like really little things. I will be like, include them in a character, or like something someone I noticed was like a quirk of someone like 10 years ago, it will pop up in my brain. So I think noticing all that kind of thing, and also in terms of, I mentioned nature before as well, but I think that sort of like details in nature, like I often feel like I can really enjoy like looking at, like I could have as nice a time doing a big, like I love hiking, doing a big hike, but also doing a little walk in the neighborhood and just like noticing like what a flower looks like slightly different today than yesterday. So all that kind of really details oriented side of things is one side, and I think that really affects how I write, how I world build. I think that one of the things I'm quite good at as a writer is creating atmosphere, and I think that's quite, being detail oriented is quite helpful for that in terms of that world building. And then I think the other thing is just, obviously it's a really big stereotype about neurodiversity is that, especially autistic people, is that autistic people aren't empathetic, but I feel like I, especially growing up, was like the complete opposite, was like incredibly like hypersensitive to everything. I would have like a huge meltdown if I ever trod on a snail, like I would feel so upset, and I think that is, it really translates to when I'm writing scenes. I feel incredibly in them. So I remember when I was probably like 18 or something, I first tried to watch the British Office, and I was like, I literally cannot watch this because I feel like I've embodied the cringe. Like I feel like I have to like curl up on myself, and I kind of feel that like when I'm writing a scene, like I'm like, I feel like if it's exciting or if the characters are scared, I like feel that really intensely. How about
I hear you on cringe humor. I can't bear it.
It's too much.
Because also I'm like, I know what it feels like to be the person that doesn't get what everyone else is seeing, and what doesn't see. I know what that feels like. It's not funny, but but I think for me it came from two things. First was defiance. So after I was diagnosed, this doctor was talking to me and was like, you'll never be able to join the army. I was like 10 years old. I was like, I don't want to join the fucking army. Like, I'm very against the army. And then they were like, oh, and you probably won't work in the arts. And first of all, I think it's crazy that we talk to kids about what they're going to do as they're adults, that we just like wish away their childhoods, and that we don't care about their potential for happiness. But secondly, I was so literal. Like I took everyone so literally. Everyone's word was gospel when I was an autistic kid. So I was like, oh, we are legally not allowed to work in the arts as autistics. Okay, I understand. And but then I would do it in private, and it was a defiant thing. It was like, I'm doing it anyway. I'm writing this fan fiction at 15, whether you like it or not. And then I think as I grew up and I realized that we wouldn't be thrown in jail if we worked in the arts, that I sort of started making order out of chaos with storytelling. I used writing as a way to make sense of the world. It's definitely what's in Unapologetic. I mean, every weird encounter I've ever had where someone's made fun of my accent, or has said something crazy about a colleague, or has just been, I have put it into writing, and I've worked through it, and I've made sense of it. And then the best thing is when you get other people, sometimes in in big numbers, going, me too. They've never seen it written down before. So it's a defiant thing, and it's also I've got to take this and put it somewhere else and make it make sense in a way, and reorder it. So that's
I really relate to that too. I think especially with my second novel, like I think that it's sometimes I don't know what I think about something until I write about it, and then almost at the end you can think, oh, that was also I was working through that on the page as well.
And it'll change my own mind. I'll feel, you know, you'll use empathy to create a character and realise, oh, actually, this is what they're doing and that's why they behave that way.
Yeah.
So exactly. It makes sense of things.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely. I completely, and the defiance thing, I think, I mean, I can definitely see that in your work and see how people relate to them as well, for sure.
I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not one of the STEM ones. I can't do STEM. I'm not good at that. So yeah, the kids are all pretty defiant, which I love.
But I think that's why, and you know, obviously, A Kind of Spark is your first book. Like, I feel like that's why it really like resonated so much with so many people.
Thank you. That's kind. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go coconut bowl again.
Okay, is there any advice you would offer aspiring neurodivergent authors?
I mean, I would say to any author, don't compare yourself to anybody, which I know everybody says, but it has to be everyday practice, because this industry makes no sense and everyone's journey is completely different. And so, but I would especially say to neurodivergent writers, like, please don't compare yourself to people who are openly, you know, admittedly neurotypical. Like, it's not the same, or any disability. It's not the same for able-bodied writers. Just as I would say, if you're a writer of colour, it's not the same as, like, what white authors have so much more privilege and so much more grace given to them in the industry. And so I would say don't compare yourself, because it will drive you mad. Like, especially for neurodivergent writers, because neurodivergent people have this compass in them for fairness, and that fairness looks different for every neurodivergent person, and sometimes it's, you know, it's pointing completely the wrong way. But if your compass is pointing the right way towards fairness in publishing, you'll drive yourself mad, because you'll be like, why didn't that brilliant author who I love get the deal they deserve, and why has this man who went to Cambridge got a 7-figure deal for something that a woman wrote much better 4 years ago? Like, it's you will drive yourself out of your mind. So you can't kind of compare yourself to other people. We're not running a race, we're in an aquarium. Like, this is an aquarium, and we're just like, oh, that's a beautiful fish, keep swimming. Oh, that's a really overpaid fish, keep swimming. Like, it's, oh, that fish, you shouldn't be alone in the room with that fish, and keep swimming. Like, it's very, like, you have to just not think of it as a race. Because I meet so many young writers I'm 33, I'm not that old, but like, and they're so competitive, and I just think, like, who are you competing against? Who are you competing against? No one's running the same race. No, like, some of us are starting way back. Yeah. Some people are already at the finish. Like, we're not running a race. So that would be my advice, which I think people know intellectually, but to actually practice that is very different.
I think what you said about being a daily practice, I feel like people don't think of it that way. They're like, oh, I feel jealous because I read about this person's 7-figure deal, like, and now I shouldn't feel jealous. But obviously, if you need to think about
it's human.
Yeah, it's human, but I think it's useful to think about it as more like something like, okay, how can I practice that by celebrating what I have done, or maintaining that internal equilibrium, because I always think that the industry is always going to be like this. So it's like, how can you be more like
and I remember
yourself?
You know, I was also a bookseller, so I remember I've pulped a lot of New York Times bestsellers. I've been like, nope, won't sell that. Like, it nothing means anything. Like, it is just luck and a bunch of other stuff, and there's no guarantees, so you can't waste time on that. It's a waste of time, and it's a waste of energy. So yeah.
And I also think about what you said about competition is definitely true as well, because I think other writers are your friends and collaborators and colleagues. They're not competition. And I think that, for me, the thing that has been the best thing about being published has been meeting other authors, like genuinely.
Without your colleagues, you'll go mad.
And also because we were chatting a little bit before about how, like, opaque the industry is, and if you're not in it, like, I was obviously a really big reader, but I still there were things that I just, like, didn't understand from the outside. So if you don't have people who understand, like, the minutiae, or like why something's so irritating to you, like, obviously other people can empathize, but they're not gonna
like tomorrow's London Book Fair, and I have to get up at the crack of dawn to go to a panel, and I'm going to hear all day long, I'm going to hear about 7 book deals that were done 6 months ago, but they're all being announced now, and that's because it's the fair and they're trying to sell foreign rights. But if you're, you know, a new author or an aspiring author, and you don't know that London Book Fair is just one big theatrical dog and pony show, then you are going to be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, you're not doing anything wrong. All the authors I love, none of them were big 7-figure deals. Like, it's you know, it's like it's fine, it's cool, but like real film lovers don't always love, I don't know, like Gone with the Wind, the big giant thing that made the enormous deal. It's like, it is what it is. And people drive themselves mad. I remember I had an author when I started who said I stole their debut year. And I said, how the hell did I do that? I didn't know I was doing that. I don't know and they'd just driven themselves mad. And I just thought I felt so awful that this person had been driving themselves mad like that. And I don't want any author to back themselves into that corner and blame themselves for things that are not in their control. And anything that's in control is in control of publishers. They decide ultimately who they are the casino, the house always wins. They will decide, not the authors.
Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult though as well, for you to hear that, because obviously that's not what you're intending.
It's just so demonstrably strange to say, but they were so earnest. But I just was like, oh, that's not what happened. That's not what we're doing here at all. Yeah, that's not what this is.
Shall we do one more question and then go to audience questions?
Yeah.
So yeah,
do you want coconut or ceramic bowl?
I don't mind, your choice.
I'll go ceramic bowl. Is there a book by a neurodivergent writer that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I feel like there's so many, so that's why I'm trying to think about it. I feel like I always say
thank you.
I always say Kind of Spark when I get asked this question, like interviews or whatever. So definitely I would say Kind of Spark if you haven't read it, because like obviously you've mentioned that it's middle grade, but like I read it as an adult obviously, and like really got so much from it. I also have done quite a few events of Tom Newland's recently, and I think Only Here Only Now is just such a good book. I mean, I am like biased because I actually edited it for Tom, like really, like I was one of the first people who read it, which I feel like so privileged to be able to say that, because obviously it's like gone on to do so well. Wow. But for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it follows the life of a teenage girl who, like, nowadays, it's never really on the page, but nowadays she would most likely probably be diagnosed with ADHD, and she's living in this kind of like quite depressed town in Fife, in coastal Fife in the 90s. And Tom would describe it much better than I would, obviously. He always describes it as like, he's like, it's a bit like Shuggie Bain if Shuggie Bain wasn't so depressing, because he said it's really important to him that he wanted to write like
Scottish joy.
Yeah, and like a working class novel that's like joyful. There's really joyful. So yeah, I would really recommend that as well. And I think something that I noticed it in Lucy Rose's The Lamb as well. I noticed it in quite a few autistic writers' writing, is when it's quite like, not episodic, that's not the right word, but it's quite snippety. Like, and I really like that about books. And I feel like both Lucy and Tom have said that's because they like kind of like write the scenes and then they see how they fit together and you know, that holds their attention. I just really like that, because I also sometimes like, if I read a book recently which had no chapters and no parts, and I really struggled with that, because as a reader I'm someone who needs to almost like see where I'm getting to my next little break, where I can stop. So like I really like that.
That's chaos.
And I think it's interesting because we often talk about neurodiversity and how it impacts, for example, the characters we write, or the sort of like, I suppose like the sentence level or whatever it might be, or things we were talking about. But I also think it can affect like the actual form of the book as well, and I think that's quite an interesting example in Only Here Only Now. Yeah. Oh, great. How about you? What would you recommend?
Well, obviously I'm excited to read Tom's book, and also I'm loving These Mortal Body. I always love River Solomon. I always loved Talia Hibbert, Helen Huang, Lizzie Huxley Jones, Little Hux. So that's my
I just finished what's the third book by Helen Huang, and that
oh yes, I know, I can't remember,
because the first one is the one you mean, The Kiss Quotient, and then it's the Bride Test, and it's the third one, The Love. I always want to call it The Love Hypothesis, but that's Ali Hazelwood's book.
Anyway, who's neurodivergent as well. Brilliant.
I would really recommend that romance series by Helen Huang, because it's basically, all of them have autistic characters, but it's quite like, it is about that, but it's also quite incidental, and like all the autistic characters are like sexy and hot and like doing fun. It's really and it's just really good romance as well, because for me, I really like if romance, like I don't mind any spice level, but I do like it if like the sex scenes sort of are also about characterization and move the plot forward. And I think she's very good at that, and she always has a really interesting author's note as well, which I love an author's note. So yeah, I would really recommend that. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, shall we come to some audience questions? If anyone, hello.
I'd be super interested to hear how neurodiversity impacts your dealings with the publishing industry outside of the actual writing. So when it comes to dealing with like agents, and publishers and publicity and this sort of thing, all of the other stuff you have to do that's not actually putting words on a page.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I think there's a few things I can say, definitely. I feel like that was one of the questions in the pot that we didn't get to, so thank you very much for asking it. I think that, basically, I kind of think that publishing is quite a bad industry for everybody. So I think if you're like disabled or neurodivergent or a person of colour or a carer or like any of those combination of things, that is then just like that much harder. But I think like it's almost like there are maybe some people who are getting those 7-figure deals who are like that.
What, the 1%,
who it does work for, but I almost think like anyone else it's not really working for. So then I think to throw in anything else, it just becomes so much like even harder. I think for me, I found how unpredictable it is, like really, really difficult. I think that's why I've had to think so much about like cultivating my own. I'm like you, I don't really have a routine. So I don't mean like a routine as in I do this every day, but I mean more a routine of thoughts, almost like, okay, I'm coming back to the writing, I'm coming back to this, because I think that I know that I can't change that. Obviously I would like to be part of seeing just the publishing industry be better. I would like to be a part of that in any way I can, but I also know that I obviously can't change it overnight. So I think trying to be like, okay, it's unpredictable, but me returning to my writing and me like that's predictable. I think I'm really lucky that I had a team who was really good at communicating with me and was really kind and transparent, and also my agent is also neurodivergent, so that's really helpful for me. I think something I find really difficult is that I feel like, and I'm sure so many people relate to this, but there's just times where I like really, really don't want to be perceived or like looked at, and I think that's really difficult if you've had like, especially like here it's such a lovely atmosphere and it's so cozy, but if it's like oftentimes like I'll go and do like especially at festivals, I don't know, it's not a bookshop, so I can't know it already, and you just don't really know what the room you're going to be in, and then the lights are always so bright and I can never see the audience, and then it's just like quite sensory overwhelming. And I also am like, if it's a day where I'm like I really don't want to be looked at, I find that quite difficult. And then I think and I was just saying to Elle beforehand, like I did a festival a couple of weeks ago, and I just, as soon as I started speaking, I could hear all the feedback in my mic, but I could tell no one else could hear that because like no one was reacting. And I don't know how you deal with that, but I just think that would be horrible for like anyone, but I can be quite sensitive to noise, so I was just like, oh. And then I think I was like, am I coming across really weirdly, which I feel like is like probably like a little bit of a trauma response and stuff. So I think for me it's probably the thing that there's so many things behind the scenes that are hardest, but probably the one which is most difficult on a sort of like more regular basis is events, probably. I don't know how you feel about that.
Perception is hard. And also this, for Unapologetic, we're starting tour on the 31st, the end of this month, and it's my 9th tour, and every tour, it doesn't matter how many you do, when people are taking tons of pictures of you, you just get ill. You just get ill seeing those pictures and seeing the mask on camera or the mask like half on, and you're like, I don't know who that person is. It's really difficult, and I always forget, and then I remember, oh no, I actually hate. And so I just try not to look at them, but then you want to be nice, you want to appreciate readers and you want to support, but perception is so difficult. And then also just physically it's difficult. And it's difficult, like you say, it's difficult for loads of authors. The one thing I do think that's good is that publishing for so long has been dealing with absolute like spoiled babies. So like if I ask the publicist, like, can I just have 5 minutes by myself before this event, they're like, of course. You're not asking me to get you a pregnancy test or like demanding that I like rub your feet, like of course you can do that, because there's been so many terrible like behavior before. So it's terrible that that's the truth, but that is the truth. So sometimes just saying a slight accommodation, I feel like they're always like, of course, because they've had some bloke who's like treated them appallingly and asked for something incomprehensible that isn't an accommodation, that's just a demand. So it's bad, but it's also, it means that I feel like we can have those conversations sometimes and they aren't horrified, and so I definitely agree. I think you're right, and I think that most of the time it's been like I've definitely had really good experiences in terms of
access and stuff, I think, like most of the time. But then
that's good.
I think it's also just like, it is just demanding. And you've been on tour so many times, you've done so many events.
But when I felt like patient zero in a lot of ways, because in 2020 when the book took off, I suddenly had publishers being like, we need you in our office to tell you how to do this, because we don't know anything about disability. So I spent a lot of time in like a lot of publishing houses being like, it's going to be different for every individual, but here is your basic. Like, and so now they know what neurodivergent means, and they know what accessibility and accommodations are. It's slow, it's like Sisyphus pushing the freaking rock up the hill, but it will eventually eventually get to a more cohesive shorthand with each other. But I think intentions are good. I'm the first to insult publishing, but I do think there are so many people whose intentions towards disability, at least, their intentions are good.
This kind of isn't an answer to the question, but just one point I would say on that before we go to the next question as well is, I feel like we talk a lot about accessibility for authors, and obviously that's really important, but I actually feel like it's like accessibility for all books workers. And I feel like I really think about that a lot for people who are working themselves in publishing, because I think that, that again, like, it's really like, it's a very white, very non-disabled, very neurotypical, very middle class to upper middle class industry. And like, I think, so I feel like accessibility has to be it has to be for all books workers, like whether it's booksellers, whether it's
editorial assistants.
Yeah, exactly, like whoever. And then I think that also the way that you make experiences better for authors is making it better to work in publishing, because so many times, like, an author's stressed, they'll say like, or I'm talking to an author friend, they're like, oh, I haven't heard back from this person, I'm very stressed about it. And I'm like, I completely understand that is really stressful, but also the reason that probably we're not hearing back is because those people are overworked and underpaid and having a really difficult time themselves. So I actually think a lot of accessibility can start from making conditions much better for
publishing
workers.
Is such a microcosm. So.
And do we have any other questions?
So still.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's neurodivergent, and they wrote a operation manual for themselves to give to their employer, and I just thought that was such an amazing, empowering thing.
Yeah.
And I just wondered what would be on your operation manuals that you would give to people.
That's so beautiful, but also so sad. Just makes me really sad. I think my number one would be like, do not believe my face. Like, when I know, because like, I'll, this is being filmed tonight. If I'm not gonna, I can't watch these things back, but if I did, I know that most of the time I'll be like, but I'm so happy to be here. So I'm like, don't believe my face would be a big part of like, it's just not the most expressive all the time. And then also tone, don't believe my tone. And I don't know, I think that's such a great question, and if I talk too much about it I'll probably start crying. But there's a part of me that's like, we're almost, I think, the same age. So there's a millennial part of your brain that's like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about that, sorry, like, you just have to treat me however you want to treat me, and I have to just lump it, like, that's the like brainwashing, and it's hard to get over that. So I would probably just say as well, just talk to me. Like, if you don't want to make small talk, just tell me. If you do want to make small talk, tell me. Like, I am not ignoring your signals. I'm never ignoring your signals. I'm just literally not good at picking them up. And I don't want to make anyone work harder for me, but I think I'd also say, like, intentions are never bad. Like, I'm always trying. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. But like, it's like, you're like, I'm always trying, I promise. It may not look like it or sound like it, but I promise I'm trying.
Yeah, I think I would feel quite similarly, definitely. I think also, what you were saying about asking about small talk and stuff, I would say just like ask stuff. Like, I really like it when people are like, would you like a hug? Like, I think that's really nice. Like, 'cause especially if you've not met someone before, and that happens obviously a lot, like you're meeting people that authors that you've met only in online. I always say like, oh yeah, would you like a hug? Because I'm like, I do like hugs, so I'm like, that would be my natural inclination. But then I'm like, wait, maybe they don't. And I think, like, if someone's like, my partner's autistic too, and we're always like, do you want to talk right now or not? And I feel like that is really nice. Like, I feel like that could help a lot of different different people.
Direct
just being like, do you want to do this or not? And it also like not being like, oh well, like if someone says no, just like it being like really chill. I think like that's something I find a lot is that things can become a conflict which like really don't need to be.
I was about to say.
think that, so I feel like if you could just like communicate in a straightforward manner, that's just so much easier.
It feels, there's a catchphrase that I've made for myself, but and it feels ironic to say because we're authors, but I always want to say to people who know they're neurotypical, I want to say, please don't tell yourself a story. Please don't be like, oh, she took too long to reply to my text, therefore she doesn't like me and she's annoyed with me and she doesn't want, like, please don't fill in that gap and put something there that's not real. I promise, like, if I didn't want to talk to you, you'd be blocked. Like, you would not be able to get to me. So, like, please don't assume malice when it's actually autism. It's actually just that I'm lying on the floor in a dark room, not talking to anybody. So that's why I say all the time to kids, but to colleagues as well, I'm like, please don't tell yourself a story. Please resist the urge. Like, I know we're all storytellers, a lot of us, and especially in the industry, but like, please, when it comes to reading autistic behavior, turn off that storytelling, because I promise you it's not as bad as you think. The person just like needs a minute, or they mean it when they say what they say.
That can kind of like be useful for everyone as well, right? In the sense, like, so many times when someone has said like, oh, I think my friend has annoyed me because they haven't replied to this, then they show me the message and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I literally was like, fine. Like, I literally think the person is just like on holiday, or they've got a lot on, or whatever. So,
I mean, I think social media and tech has made that so much worse. Like, we're all so available all the time, and I don't think people were reading this much into behavior. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I really think people analyze behavior because they want to be good, and they want to be a good friend, they want to be a good colleague. But I've had really nervous publicity assistants and publishing assistants reply to my emails. My emails are very abrupt because I'm always on the move, or I'm working, and I don't like to have emails when I'm working. And the assistant will be like, oh, I read your last email, I'm really sorry if I came across, and I'm just like, stop.
It's so interesting because I spoke with quite a senior editor at a publishing house, and she told me that there's a really specific tone of email that is like really necessary in publishing, and she said that she tells her juniors if they don't quite have it, she's like, okay, rewrite the email as if you've got a smile on your face. And she said that, but I sometimes find that quite difficult, and I've spoken to other writers about this, when you think something really good is going to happen about your book, or like I can't really think of a good example right now, but you basically think something is going better than it is because the language around it is quite flowery. And I think that's quite difficult because it's like you're always trying to second guess, like, okay, so there's some good news, but publishing emails are really like flowery, so maybe it's kind of like more down here than they're saying it is. And I think that's something I find really difficult as well, going back to the previous question. I think the thing that would help me the most is if people didn't overpromise, and then I always think it's really strange when someone's like, I'll get back to you by the end of the week, and then they don't. I'm like, that's totally fine. If you need 3 weeks to get back to me, that is like absolutely no problem. Don't set yourself like completely unrealistic deadlines
completely
to keep other people happy. I think that would just be easier if we're just a bit more.
And don't email like a Stepford wife. That's really that's really eerie, the idea of someone being like, greetings. I'm just like, you can email like a person, it's okay. And once I've like cracked that into my colleagues, they are just like, Elle, Waterstones, 5 p.m. this day, be there. And I'll be like, yes, okay. I don't mind that at all. So that's such a nice question.
Do we have one last question?
You're both multidisciplinary writers. You write poetry, you're a screenwriter. Do those processes feel very different? Like, when you're writing, do they feel like very separate when you come into like those spaces?
That's a great question. I find screenwriting really freeing because I don't have to use prose so much. I actually was using too much prose, I think, when I wrote my first season, and the producer that I was working with was like, we don't need this many stage directions. I know you're a novelist, but we don't need to know what like their interiority is in this moment. I had to like cut that out of my habits. But I love dialogue, so screenwriting's, that's a really great partnership. But like, I think poetry and prose is such a gorgeous marriage, and you do it really well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that for me, something that I feel like was really kind of drilled into me when I was doing like poetry development schemes and stuff, is that every single thing should be, whether it's a blank space or a word, should be earning its place in the poem. And I do, obviously it's a bit different with a novel length project, but I do try and think about that. I mean, that's great. I really do, because I read my work aloud a lot, which I think is really poetry based. Like, I feel like I literally will read everything, even in a really long form project, aloud at least once when I'm editing it. And I think that helps because your mouth does edit, your brain will edit things for you when you're speaking them aloud, and it can tell you where it's really awkward. I think that's from poetry. But then I also think, I do think, is this earning its place, you know? And I often, when I'm editing, will kind of take each paragraph and say, like, okay, is this doing something? I feel like I used to think about that a lot in each line of a poem as well, and I still do think about it now. So I think, yes, it definitely really interacts with and has made me much better, I'm sure, writer, but also editor. I think also, though, in a different way, poetry feels like, I mean, obviously, unfortunately for us poets, there's really like no money in poetry, but I think that can also mean that it feels a bit different. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm having to contend with all this industry stuff that we're talking about. And I think that can be quite freeing, because either it can just be for me, or it's very much like I don't have to go through different layers of people. Like, if I want to like wang a poem off to someone, I'm just like, okay, well, I've sent it. And I think that makes it also, this whole poetry scene, like, I'm sure, as you know, like, feels so much more like DIY, or you can do like little zine projects or whatever you want. And I feel like that has really felt like a kind of escape for me, and I really like that about it, because I think I can be someone who can be quite hyper focused. So it feels like, I feel like I went through this phase where I was like, I'm gonna like read all these books about being a professional author and learn all about it, and then it's like, well, poetry just isn't like that. So that feels quite nice and quite freeing. Yeah. Okay, I think that we are kind of at time to sort of like begin wrapping up now, but thank you so much for everyone for coming. It was really nice. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much to Pages of Hackney team for having us as well. Like, it was just such a lovely evening. And thank you so much for being such a lovely audience.
Thank you.